Est-ce qu'en tant que Français, vous envisagez de nous voir dans votre pays avec des chars ou avec des véhicules militaires, des militaires sénégalais avec les tenues sénégalaises, comme ça parce que sur le plan historique, la France a esclavagisé, a colonisé et est restée. Évidemment, je pense que quand vous inversez un peu les rôles, vous concevrez très mal qu'une autre armée, la Chine, la Russie, le Sénégal ou n'importe quel autre pays puisse avoir une base militaire en France.
Donc les soldats français doivent partir?
Il n'y a pas encore de délai de rigueur par rapport à ça, et si ça doit être fait, cela sera dit aux autorités françaises qui en auront la primeur et suivant les calendriers établis.
The Senegalese president is right. France and other Western countries who are in the habit of establishing military bases in Africa will never tolerate African countries establishing military bases in their country. So why do they do it? Africa is waking up, and thanks to young and dynamic leaders, they are not like their grandfathers or forefathers who signed all sorts of agreements with colonialists on the eve of independence. Many signed all sorts of economic agreements, military agreements with foreign countries that are meant to subjugate African countries. But now they are waking up and freeing themselves of these people who are only here to plunder and never for any gain for African countries. From Niger to Mali to Burkina Faso and now Senegal, telling France that they must withdraw all their military personnel in Senegal and close down all the military bases. This is coming on the 80th anniversary of the massacre by France of 65 Senegalese soldiers. And the worst part of all that was that the 65 Senegalese soldiers were at the forefront during the Second World War in France, fighting for the liberation of France from the Germans. And when they protested and demanded for their pay, the French military leaders found it insulting that people that are supposed to be their subjects are demanding for pay, that they are supposed to work free for them. That was why during the Second World War, many French colonies contributed soldiers that fought alongside Frenchmen during the Second World War. And because of the pressure from African countries, Macron, the president of France, wrote a letter to the Senegalese president acknowledging for the first time that it was a massacre, expressing his regrets. According to the Senegalese president, it is better that they at least have accepted finally that it was a massacre. They will now have to talk about reparations in the future. But that's still not going to deter the young president from his campaign promise. He campaigned on the fact that he will tell France to withdraw all their forces and close down their military bases in Senegal, which he has done by this message. Of course, there will be official communication. This is coming at a time that Chad announced their withdrawal from the military agreement with France, signaling that France must remove all their military personnel and close down their military bases in Chad. As you can see in this map, these are all the military bases in Chad. What are they doing with all these bases in a foreign country? So France and Macron are receiving it front, left, right and center. From Chad to the Sahel, of course they have formed a confederation, Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali, and now to Senegal. And remember, the campaign to withdraw from the French Monetary Union in West Africa actually started from Senegal. So who knows, maybe the young president might start the campaign to withdraw from the French Monetary Union. Of course, the Sahel countries have already signaled that they will withdraw from the French Monetary Union and establish their own currency so as to be in control of their economy. How can a sovereign country rely on a foreign country for their currency, the management of the currency, the printing of the currency? Everything surrounding your economy is being handled by a foreigner. That doesn't show that you are independent, and it doesn't show that you have the full sovereignty. You can't exercise it when you rely on a foreign country. Let's not talk about the conditions for the monetary union, the amount of money that a country is required to deposit in France or in the bank, the conditions for borrowing money, many things that are very, very subjugating for a so-called independent country. The messaging from the Senegalese president is quite clear. He actually captured what France is doing in Africa by asking the question, would you accept if Senegal or any other country, China, Russia, name them, applies to establish a military base in France, how would French people say it? So if you wouldn't accept that, why do you want to do it in another man's country? Or why do you do it? Why do you establish multiple military bases in a foreign country? They do it because the independence of these countries are just on paper. That's why it is easy for them to intervene militarily if the political side is not going the way they want. Like what happened in Cote d'Ivoire, they intervened militarily to remove Laurent Gbagbo. You see, Western countries need to ask themselves an honest question. Why are African countries ditching them and looking east? Why are African countries looking at China, building new relationships with China, Russia, and other countries apart from the West? It is simply because, that's if they don't know it already, but they know, by the way, it is simply because all these countries treat them equally. They don't also have any policy that intervenes in their political crisis. They don't also care about their politics. They don't tell them or teach them, try to impose on them the kind of democracy, the kind of governance, or how to handle local issues. They don't intervene. They are only business focused, just like China. They come into your country. If there are infrastructure investment that they want to do, they do that. They also bring in cheap loans. They offer one of the cheapest loans available, even less than IMF and other Western financial institutions. So the mere fact that they treat them equally draws people to them. And when you talk about military hardware, countries like Russia and China will not say there is a hard limit. There is a weapon or an equipment that they will not sell to you. Just choose what you want. Once you have the money, they are willing to sell to you. Unlike Western countries that will tell you no matter how much you offer, we are not going to sell this one to you. So practically telling you that you are not an equal. That's not even the most annoying part, because most African countries don't actually need all these military hardware. Most cannot afford it, they are poor. But the most annoying part is that these people that give you all sorts of conditions, subjugate you, make you feel as if you're less than them, they still can't help themselves. They still can't stop exploiting African resources. Now, there is something strange happening in West Africa. On one hand, Francophone countries are kicking out France in their countries because of their meddling, their unnecessary interference in their politics, in their economy, their chokehold on their resources, many issues they have with France, they are kicking them out. On the other hand, an Anglophone country that doesn't speak French is embracing France. What is there to gain by bringing in France to Nigeria? Nigeria is supposed to welcome all these Francophone countries that are kicking out France. They are supposed to say, now come together, let's build an economy together. Let's build a currency, let's do so things. After all, it was the same France that frustrated the ECO that Nigeria spearheaded under ECOWAS. Nigeria and ECOWAS would have benefited from the ECO common currency, but France hijacked it despite being thousands of miles away in Europe. They are not in Africa, but they are meddling in African affairs. So it means that France cannot live without meddling in Africa, without taking African resources, without denying the African people their right to their resources. So as you can see, it's still the mentality of elderly people in Africa. When you compare that to the age of the leaders of these Sahel countries, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, Chad, and this young dynamic president of Senegal, you will see that their thinking is quite different. They understand, they are revolutionaries, they can see the future of Africa. That's why they are starting today to remove all the obstacles, all the countries preventing Africa from growing, from developing, from achieving their potential. They are starting today to say no. You can no longer continue to colonize us through the back door. You can no longer continue to dictate affairs in Africa. Despite not being from Africa, you are in faraway Europe, but you can't live without meddling in African affairs.